ain't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, today's video, I'm going to be breaking down X-Men number 17 by Gerry Duggan and Joshua Cassara. This issue really nailed home a few things for me, but the key thing that I want to focus on right off the bat is what is going on with the recently rediscovered Laura Kinney. Last issue, we discovered the original Laura Kinney who went into the vault back in Jonathan Hickman's X-Men number 5. She was still alive in the vault, despite being heavily believed that she had died during her and Sync's attempt to escape the vault. She is very much still alive and is considerably far older than she was when she initially went in, where Sync's mind had aged hundreds of years after his escape from the vault in X-Men number 19. Laura is thousands of years older. And this is kind of where things are going to get really weird, because this brings up a very big issue, something that I hinted at in my previous video for X-Men number 16, everything going on with resurrection protocols. We know now that there were some accidental resurrections. Forge brings up that originally he thought the 5 had only resurrected one mutant by accident, but with the discovery of the original Laura Kinney, or what is pretty much referred to for the rest of this issue as Alpha Wolverine, they mistakenly resurrected a second mutant, which leads me to believe that at some point, and maybe this was hinted at before and I just never really thought about it, but that means Darwin was accidentally resurrected as well. And they probably, after going back and overviewing the after action reports, they realized Darwin was in fact still alive, hence why they were going on the rescue mission to go get him in the first place, meaning yeah, they did accidentally resurrect Darwin, but that means they also have accidentally resurrected Laura Kinney, and she has been roaming around just chilling on the island ever since. She was a member of the first Hellfire Gala X-Men Vote team. And while she's no longer a member of this current X-Men roster, she is still walking around on the island just kind of doing her own thing. Right now, she's been running with the X-Terminators up to this point, but the thing is, the true original Laura Kinney is now back on the island. Forge, while initially struggling with whether or not he should bring her back, he does ultimately decide to bring her back, largely because Caliban, who for the most part we discover in this issue, is not actually the real true Caliban. This is actually just the DNA and mind melded together into a suit that is creating a facsimile of Caliban. Well, technically it is actually Caliban. The real Caliban is actually still on the island. We just know that Forge never did actually ask him for his permission to use his cells in the first place, because Forge later admits this to the real Caliban later. All of that aside, Caliban is the one who is actually like, no, we have to bring her home. All of his gifts have been used and perverted by terrible people for terrible ends, and he doesn't want to keep that going. He wants to actually use his powers for something good. His ability to detect and hunt mutants, he wants to use that for something good for once in his life. And if he's gonna do it, it's going to be to save the Alpha Wolverine. That said, Gerry Duggan has kept his promise. When it was revealed that Gerry Duggan was going to be taking over the X-Men series from Jonathan Hickman, he promised that he would address the future of Sync and Wolverine after everything that had happened between them in the vault, with them having spent hundreds of years together dating, that yeah, it's gotta be a thing. They gotta address this. They can't just leave this on the table. And while I think a lot of people were kind of miffed by the idea that it seemed he was splitting them up, it did kind of seem odd that he made this big deal about how he was gonna address it and then just kind of said, nah, we're gonna sweep it under the rug. But no, he actually is addressing it, because now the Sync that was in the vault and the Laura that was in the vault, they are now back together. And while at first it kind of makes you wonder whether or not they're going to embrace one another, is Sync just going to be left in the cold yet again and dealing with yet another love interest who is the same love interest but just a different version of her? Is he going to be forced to carry that weight yet again and just be a sad boy for the rest of his life? And that's not actually the case. It seems that everything is back on track, almost as if they had never parted ways. But things are gonna get interesting because we can't forget that Sync is dealing with some deterioration issues, that he's aging faster. At some point, his body is very likely going to age to catch up with his mind, because every time he uses his powers, his body ages more. And while that has yet to be fully explored more, we know that is still a thing. So who knows what's gonna happen there with this now. But it seems like just as Sync is getting everything back, we still have to keep in the back of our minds he still has some other issues that haven't been sorted out yet. The real question is, what are they going to do with the Beta Wolverine? Are they going to keep her around, or are there just going to be 2 Wolverines roaming around on the island? I mean, technically 3 Wolverines because, you know, Logan, but the deal is there are 2 Laura Kinneys now. One with all the experiences and memories of everything that happened in the vault, and one who has no recollection. What is going to happen with that? I'm really hoping, and I don't think Jerry Duggan's going to do this, but I really hope he doesn't take the low-hanging fruit of trying to bring back the Beta Wolverine, have her be like, whoa, wow, I never realized how much seeing you with this other version of me just made me realize how much I miss you. I don't want them to go that route. Please don't take that low-hanging fruit. But I do like the idea that Sync is actually gonna get to be happy, if only for a little while. Another thing that I really liked in this issue that I feel bears some talking about is Forge's introduction to Seraphina. For those who are not familiar, Seraphina is actually not a new character like a lot of the Children of the Vault are. She is actually a throwback to X-Men Volume 2, number 188, back in 2006. She's a Mike Carey, Chris Bachalo creation who, a lot of people, I would forgive you if you didn't remember her. She appeared in roughly 8 comics prior to her return in Jonathan Hickman's X-Men Volume 5, number 1, so I would forgive anyone if you don't remember exactly who she is. And of course, she also looks incredibly different than what we remember her when she was first introduced, plus when she had returned to the X-Men's universe. Seraphina is capable of cloaking her presence, whether this is on a physical level or even on a psionic level, for all intents and purposes, allowing her to be invisible to both the naked eye and the mind's eye. She's also capable of translocation, able to teleport herself pretty much wherever she wants, whenever she wants, so long as her destination is within a short distance. We don't really know the upper limit on that, but I would go on a limb that it's safe to say her teleportation range is on par with Nightcrawler's. Not to mention she has access to Adamantium 9 throwing darts. This is an alternative form of adamantium that is capable of poisoning Wolverine's adamantium skeleton. Not only that, she's also a technopath. She's able to interface with and control pretty much any form of technology that she wishes. Not only can she do this with technology, she can also form retractable wires that allow her to interface with this technology. She can even use this as a form of mind control on normal people. Now, I saved this last part because something really incredible happens here that I think Forge is unaware of actually happening. Forge encounters Seraphina in this issue, and she attempts to kill him, and really the only thing standing between Forge and sudden death is Caliban, who is able to communicate with Seraphina on a level that almost borders on her forming some kind of empathy with Caliban. Caliban bringing up the fact that it was in fact the X-Men who saved her from Orcus in Jonathan Hickman's X-Men Volume 5, number 1, and that regardless of the fact that they are enemies, it's just what the X-Men do. That is why they saved her, regardless of the fact that they didn't know whether she was a friend or a foe at the time. This is what actually prompts Seraphina to allow Forge to take Alpha Wolverine and let him escape from the vault. But there is something she brings up during their conversation that leads me to believe that Forge didn't see what he actually thought that he saw. During their conversation, Seraphina asked Forge if he was the one responsible for the technology that's outside the vault that captured some of the post-human children, and what was the purpose of it. He openly admits that yes, he was the one who constructed the device, the Matrix-style interface that was leading the children of the vault to believe that they had conquered the entire universe. But Seraphina doesn't really seem bothered by his answer, and when she asked him why, Forge responds that the alternative was war, and while he doesn't go much further than that, Seraphina does agree that yes, he was correct. The alternative was war. And while she asks him what his ulterior motives were, he says that honestly, he just wanted to see what would happen. And Seraphina reveals that she believes him, but more importantly, that she's allowing him to leave because she wants to see how this whole thing will end. That is a very, very incredible thing to take note of, but the thing I think is more important to take note of is what happens after that. Afterwards, Forge is assaulted by a pair of wires that interface with his body, and he suddenly just gets knocked out. And when he awakens in the version of Krakoa that we saw him reveal to Mr. Sinister. That was his long-term goal for the landscape of Krakoa, with everything being high-rise, techno-organic buildings, and mutants just living in ultimate prosperity. And it's during this moment that Forge is met by Darwin. Darwin, seemingly alive, has injected himself into Forge's memories, claiming that the Children of the Vault had experimented on him to the point that when they had interfaced him with their technology as a means to escape death, as he is prone to do, he reverse interfaced himself with their technology, allowing him to be uploaded as data into their systems with them not realizing it. This allowed him to escape what he referred to as their live autopsies. Darwin's body, for whatever reason, is still somewhere in the vault, or at the very least, maybe it has actually been destroyed. But Darwin makes it seem as though him being data now, he has now transcended normal mutant life. And now he is truly unkillable because, as he states, it's harder to kill an idea than it is to kill someone's actual body. And while he says he's not ready to leave, that he wants to spend more time in the vault to learn more about the post-humans, which seems kind of odd for a guy who was being tortured for so many centuries, and even says himself that his first few centuries after being left behind in the vault were things he doesn't want to remember. He seems to want to stay behind so that he can monitor the post-children for reasons. But the reason why I think something's not quite right here is because of how this happens. He's interfaced with connecting wires. And yeah, while Darwin's story may check out, it's not that far out of the realm of possibility to believe that this wasn't Seraphina's work instead. Seraphina is able to use a very similar type of interface that allows her to connect to an organic life form no differently than she can technology. Not only can she interface with other people's minds, she can create false memories. To the point that during X-Men Volume 2, number 191, back in 2006, she was able to manipulate Lady Mastermind's powers, even boosting them beyond the normal range and limits that she would normally have. Even going as far to implanting memories that seemed incredibly real, even to someone like Lady Mastermind who has power over illusions. So it leads me to wonder whether or not that was in fact actually Darwin or Seraphina messing with him. Now, it's not to say that Darwin couldn't have used his powers to transcend his mortal coil and become something more. That's not out of the realm of possibility, so I'm not trying to make anyone believe that this wasn't real, because for all intents and purposes, Darwin has been able to subvert even death itself. And when I say death, I'm referring to the Asgardian goddess Hela, who, when she touched him, normally any normal person would have died. Her physical touch can literally kill someone, and when she touched Darwin, his powers kicked into full gear, and rather than allowing him to die or doing like what we've seen in the past where he faced off with the World Breaker Hulk, instead of his body just allowing him to weather the punches that the Hulk could throw, his body teleported him far away from harm. Instead of doing that this time, his body just simply changed his physiology to become an Asgardian god of death himself. So this isn't the first time Darwin's done something weird whenever he's faced with mortality. But that said, just based on the evidence that we've seen, I can't help but wonder if this isn't really happening, especially based on what Forge has already done in regards to the Children of the Vault. He created this Matrix-style setup that has them believing that they're actually conquering the universe. What if Seraphina turned that same technology against it? What if we get to X-Men number 18 and all the stuff I just talked about didn't even happen? This is something I think is a very real possibility, and something that man, if it does, Forge is gonna be messed up in the head for quite a while because once again, Seraphina did say she wants to see how this'll end. So yeah, she's very likely still messing with him, and he just doesn't know it yet. What does lead me to believe that this isn't in fact a lie is because we do get an after action report from Dr. Cecilia Reyes talking about Forge's memory. Everybody's memory on Krakoa that is backed up into Cerebro, all of it has a data size on it, no different than the files you have on your phone or your computer. Everyone's memories and consciousness has a certain size. And in the case of characters like Sync and Laura Kinney, the data sizes of their backups are huge because they have so many memories based on their time being in the vault, which was a temporal anomaly that even though time passed normally outside the vault, hundreds and thousands of years had passed within it. So while they were there, their minds and the backups that go with it became incredibly large. Forge, despite using his hazmat suit that used part of Tempo's DNA that allowed him to create a field around himself, a stasis that kept him from being aged the same way they were, he still came out of the vault with a much greater file size to his Cerebro backup, with Dr. Cecilia Reyes stating that his jumped up to zettabytes worth of information. And for those who don't know what a zettabyte is 1 trillion gigabytes. But that said, it stated that his backup has become that large, and not just 1 trillion gigabytes, but they said zettabytes, plural, meaning that it is trillions upon trillions upon trillions of gigabytes. Now, that said, it's also stated that his backup has become on par with some of the most powerful telepaths on Krakoa. And Forge is not a telepath, but something happened. When they went back and double checked it, Dr. Cecilia Reyes noted that his backup was back to normal size, meaning something came back with him. Now, there could be one of two culprits here. Could this have been Darwin piggybacking him? It wouldn't be unusual for Darwin to do such a thing because technically he did piggyback his essence onto Vulcan during the Deadly Genesis story arc, which was how Darwin was able to be resurrected after the X-Men first found Vulcan on Krakoa. I don't think that's the case because Darwin said he wanted to stay. That said, Seraphina is very likely the one who showed him what he saw when he was still in the vault. So maybe Seraphina is piggybacking him and has somehow infiltrated the Cerebro backups, because I'm gonna go on a limb and say Seraphina has no interest whatsoever. Even though she did seem to let them go, she had no interest in forming any kind of a peace. Or at the very least, maybe she wants to see exactly what it is they're doing so she can report back to the Children of the Vault. Anyways, that's everything I want to talk about with X-Men number 17. This issue, bruh. I feel like Jerry Duggan's doing a really good job going back and paying off some of those dividends that we got back in Jonathan Hickman's X-Men series. And while I don't think that Seraphina has any good intentions whatsoever for Krakoa, I do wonder if he is at some point going to make it where over time she's going to bear witness to the things that are happening on Krakoa and maybe soften her stance on her anti-mutant sentiment. That is something that could very likely happen because the X-Men didn't even really mean her any harm. They saved her from Orchis, which by her own admission, she was not fond of. For the longest time, a lot of people have thought maybe the post-human Children of the Vault and Orchis were going to work together, but at the end of the day, the Children of the Vault have no love for Orchis. They don't have love for humans as a whole, period. But what I can definitely say is that the Children of the Vault are far from done with Krakoa. But anyways, if this is your first time checking out any of my X-Men videos, check out this playlist right here and get caught up on all my videos regarding the entire line of Jonathan Hickman's X-Men. And also, let me know what you thought about X-Men number 17. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.